good morning, this is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant morning, and I want to do a little bit of an update on the Universal Ostrich farm, Katie Persitney and family out in BC, because they've now got their ruling back from the appeal, and the three judges turned down the appeal basically point blank. Now I have got a copy of that appeal, that judgment, and I'm going to go through a few points which I think are really very interesting. Okay, so what it basically points out is that even though there is room for fresh evidence to be presented before the courts, even if it does, it still all falls back to the purview of the CFIA and the Minister's office. Now, Katie cannot present new evidence to the Minister or to the CFIA. And why can she not do this? Because the only piece of evidence that really matters in this case is the results of a retest. A scientifically done, independent retest of those birds to see if they have any disease, virus, whatever left in them. Okay? But she cannot do that. And oh, why can she not do that? Well, maybe it's because of this. Take a look at this, folks. This is unbelievable. This is such a stunning threat. It is unbelievable. Health of Animals Act Enforcement Provisions. Section 65(1) of the Act states that anyone who contravenes any part of the Act, including its regulations, is guilty of an offence punishable on summary conviction with a fine up to $50,000 and or imprisonment of up to 6 months. This would include unauthorised testing, tampering or interference with quarantined animals. Summary versus indictable offences. More serious or intentional violations may result in indictable offences which carry harsher penalties, potentially up to 2 years imprisonment and fines up to $250,000. And of course Katie falls into the second category, more serious or intentional violations. Well, of course it would be intentional if she was getting them tested so she could bring new evidence to the Minister. It's intentional. So this is a heavy-handed threat to basically force Katie to not test those animals, and the CFIA have clearly stated that they will not be retesting the birds. So there you go, every avenue has been closed, and I repeat myself here, but this is your Supreme Court appeal. You can't do this. This is absolutely unbelievable. You cannot do this. So how can Katie present new evidence under this heavy threat from the CFIA? $2,000 a bird and 6 months in jail? Are you kidding me? Okay, so basically they have stopped Katie from presenting any new evidence whatsoever because that's the only evidence that matters. Now, this is an obstruction of justice. And I think that because Paul MacKinnon, the head of the CFIA, who is essentially administrator, knew this, he knew that this would be the outcome, that he would prevent her from retesting, and he knew that the judges would not accept new evidence because that purview fell under the Minister and his agency. Okay, so this was a setup that, they were stick handling Katie, and I feel so sorry that she's had to go through this because they knew what they were doing. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. And as we saw in the fisheries scandal, the BC fisheries scandal, that one scientist there, she was also threatened. She was sent threatening letters, and a colleague of hers had all of his data confiscated by the CFIA. Okay, so this wonderful family are being bullied to death, and nobody seems to be pointing this out. Now, I've been encouraging Katie to go as public, as far and wide, make this international, because this is an absolute embarrassment. This is an absolute embarrassment, another embarrassment for the CFIA to be basically, like I say, stick handling just regular, ordinary folk into a situation where they can't do anything without facing literally millions of dollars in fines and possibly 2-3 years in jail. Anyway, without further ado, let's go over to the judge's summary. I'm not going to read the whole thing, I'm just going to read some portions of it, but I think you'll see that it was definitely a butt-covering device. The judges wanted nothing to do with it. I think they're very concerned that this is gaining public traction. And so anyways, without further ado, here we go. Okay, so this is the actual judge's review from the appeal of the Universal Ostrich Farms against the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, Judges Gleeson, LeBlanc and Heckman. It's actually kind of interesting. The first part is really just a background of the situation, and then we get into a middle section which I find quite interesting because it explains quite a lot. And now there are two matters that they dealt with here. This was the second one was ineffective assistance. The first matter is the fresh evidence. 24. We deal first with the second matter and note that the general theme of this portion of the fresh evidence and its proposed use is that the flock's alleged recovery negates the need for culling, which the appellant contends means that the minister's decisions are unreasonable. Putting aside the strength of this evidence, which is not independent scientific proof, this proposed use is contrary to the court's role on judicial review. Now remember that line. Putting aside the strength of this evidence, which is not independent scientific proof. It's important. Very, very important to remember just that one little line. It goes on to say, 25, the general rule is that only the evidence that was before the administrative decision maker is relevant and thus admissible. As a result, post-decision evidence is normally irrelevant and thus inadmissible. So anything that you say in your presentation, if it was not in front of the judge, it is considered as anecdotal evidence and not admissible. Okay, 26. The bar on admitting additional evidence on judicial review recognises that it is not the role of the courts to engage in fact-finding or to otherwise redecide the merits of an administrative decision. Okay, so they're telling you right there that the courts cannot interfere with the administrative process of another department. And it goes on, exceptions to the general rule may be available where admitting the evidence would not frustrate the differing roles of administrative decision makers and reviewing courts. In other words, they don't want to start a big argument within the government itself as to whose role is who's wearing the big hat and who's wearing the big ring, you know, all of that kind of stuff, right? 27. The appellant is encouraging the court to use fresh evidence to redecide the CFIA's decisions based on what it claims is the situation today. This is not our role. You see how they keep repeating? This is very much a butt-covering judgment by these judges. Okay, I think they see that this is going to go very, very public, and they want to back off from this as much as possible. Okay, that is not our role. We are only tasked with reviewing the reasonableness of the CFIA's decisions at the time they were made, which is the essence of the judicial review remedy. Okay, so basically they're just saying they're re-reviewing the original decision by the CFIA. 28. This is just absolutely insane. I mean, you know, it just begs. It begs you to ask what is happening within the minds of judges that would put down a rule like this. I think every member of the public could see, even down to a kindergartner, how crazy this line is. Few decisions are of such a nature as to require a court to use the most up-to-date evidence available in undertaking its review. For examples of exceptional circumstances, see Coldwater. This is just case law. But I mean, how can you decide anything when you don't have the most up-to-date evidence? 29. Conversely, in the present case, the notice to dispose and the exemption denial do not call for a constant reconsideration by the courts over time. Had the federal court not granted a stay of the notice to dispose, the appellant's flock would have been culled months ago. In our view, the stays granted by the federal court and by a single judge in this court in the present case cannot be used as a mechanism aimed at giving the appellant the chance to ask this court for a reconsideration that would effectively undo the application of the stamping out policy. This is the cull order. Should the appellant wish to have the notice to dispose re-examined in the light of the fresh evidence, its recourse is to ask the CFIA or the minister to do so. So once again, these judges are saying all of this is out of their jurisdiction, and that you have to go to the CFIA or the minister for a remedy. 30. The only potentially relevant exception in this case to the general rule that prevents fresh evidence in a judicial review application would be one that recognises that fresh evidence may be admitted for the exercise of remedial discretion by the courts, where no practical purpose would be served by quashing and sending the matter back. However, that principle has no application here. Even if we were to find the decisions unreasonable, this is not a case where it would be appropriate for this court to quash the proceedings. The apparent current health status of the flock does not change the fact that it is for the minister or the CFIA to decide the response to an HPAI outbreak, and there is no foregone conclusion as to what any re-examination decision might be. In other words, they just told you that their word means nothing. Again, it is the minister or the CFIA. And that, my friends, is why they refused. There we go, 32. Thus we find that the fresh evidence as to the current health status of the appellant's flock is inadmissible. And I just want to take a moment here to say how much I respect the courage of Katie and her family for staying strong, for staying with this. It will be an arduous trip, and one of the things that is, of course, they just wear you down. They just wear you down, keep you waiting. Yes, it's a very difficult thing to go through. So to stand up to the big bully like that takes a lot of courage, and yes, absolute hats off, respect. I'm behind you 100%. I hope to be at the farm sometime end of the first week of October to show some support, and if I can help by spreading the word here, then that's what I'm going to do. And yes, thank you for standing up, not just for yourself, but for all farmers across Canada and around the world, because the same thing is happening absolutely everywhere. So like I say, I've 100% got your back there, Katie, and yes, I'll be doing whatever I can to spread the word, and yeah, see if we can raise some money for all of this. This doesn't come cheap. And so anyone who can donate, I will leave the links to the Ostrich farm below. And if you can donate something, share this video, share any information that you see about the ostriches, then please do so. So I think that Katie has a Supreme Court appeal here. You cannot put people in a situation where they cannot prove the health of those birds other than with anecdotal information. Okay, and it is only the minister and the CFIA that can overturn this. Oh, and by the way, who is this minister, this Paul MacKinnon? Well, here we go. Let's take a little look at Paul. So here is the guy, Paul MacKinnon, President of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Paul MacKinnon was appointed President of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency on January 27th, 2024. And here he is, about the President. Prior to joining the CFIA, Paul served as Deputy Secretary to the Cabinet at the Privy Council Office from 2021 to 2024. While there, Paul supported the Government House Leader in delivering the government's legislative agenda, while also being responsible for providing advice on machinery of government issues across numerous agencies and departments. From 2019 to 2021, Paul was Executive Vice President of the Canadian Border Services, blah, blah, blah. Prior to joining the CBSA, Paul was Assistant Deputy Minister of Strategic and Programme Policy at Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. His responsibilities included leading consultations with national and international partners and stakeholders to advance Canada's broad immigration policy. Now, Paul surely has a degree in animal health sciences or biology or something like that to give him some kind of basic, more than I owned a cat and a dog when I was a kid, qualifications to run the CFIA. But, Paul has a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the University of Prince Edward Island. So this man is an administrator. He is a bureaucratic administrator and has very little understanding, I suspect, of how the real world works. Now, I'm going to leave below in the description box his email and phone number, and it is so clear that we have to go public with this. This has to spread far and wide. As many people share this video, share any information that you see about the Universal Ostrich Farm on Facebook. I will also link the Facebook pages and Katie's page so that you can join in putting pressure on this unelected bureaucratic government body who basically are walking around strong-arming people, and when they don't do what they're told, issue live threats. Okay, well, I hope this explains a few things, and I hope it was of interest. And if you enjoyed it, please like, comment, subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Houndog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant morning, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.